Thank you, Shanda. I'm delighted to be with everybody today and for this evening, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you. And basically, the purpose of tonight is just to explore some possibilities. And I'm going to share with you an experience that we had when I was at Arizona State University, undergraduate in business administration. And we came up with a fundraiser that was kind of out of the ordinary. It was different than the usual, party events and raffles and car washes and things like that. So tonight we're going to talk about some dynamic fundraising opportunities that you might consider. And by the way, what we're going to talk about tonight are just examples. Your chapter, uh, your brothers and members of the fraternity, you might come up with something that's totally unique, totally different, but we're going to have some specific intentions in mind to look at and to consider and to kind of brainstorm a little bit. And then we're going to have another session in January the 11th, which will be the second Monday in January at the basically at the same time. And we can set the foundation and the next steps for what your chapter might be able to create for the next semester in terms of fundraising and dynamic opportunities to go beyond just raising money for the chapter. So a little bit about myself. I've been an entrepreneur basically since an undergraduate. I was a very successful securities broker for about 10 years, and then I got into telecommunications, and then I got into the decentralized web, basically. So some of you might know it as blockchain, and blockchain is probably a poor term for it, but blockchain is sort of what's next for the internet and all our connectivity and so forth. It's sort of like Web 3.0. And the first killer application is cryptocurrency, which you've probably heard about, but we are looking at ways to go beyond cryptocurrency. It's like when the internet first came out, email was the killer application for the internet, but the internet was much more. Same thing with blockchain and decentralization. So I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I love to foster ideas and assist with people to see those ideas become reality. And that's basically the purpose of what we're planning to explore tonight. So does anybody have any questions, any comments before I go into a presentation here? And feel free to put comments in the chat. I can actually see those, and Shanda's kind of covering me so that if somebody has a question and I haven't announced that, then she will basically let me know and we can talk about that. So let's go ahead and start with a presentation to give you kind of an idea of what we are talking about tonight and what the opportunity set is. So this is the overall high-level view, which is just to simply explore the question, what is possible with chapter fundraising? And could the project that your chapter takes on for fundraising, could it have some dimensions that could be equal to or maybe greater than whatever funds you happen to raise from the project? Could it be a valuable entrepreneurial experience? Could the project involve the business community and connections and collaboration, maybe with the faculty of your particular university, maybe with alumni, maybe with other colleges within your university, such as computer science or other realms. So this is just an open question as to what are the possibilities for collaboration for your chapter during a semester and in conjunction with raising funds? So we also might be able to incorporate something that's complementary to your academic study. So I always like to look at the definition of words. So I looked up dynamics, and dynamics, let's take the second definition there: forces or properties which stimulate growth, development, or change within a system or process. The dynamics of changing social relationships. And same thing on the other, the force, and unfortunately I can't see it, so I'm going to skip it right now because I've got another. Let's see if we can minimize this. Okay, so as a noun, it's a force that stimulates or change process within a system or process, progress within a system or process. Evaluation is part of the basic dynamic of the project. So that's just kind of an overall context of what we mean by dynamic Deltasig fundraising. So what is possible? We'll talk about it a little bit after I go through this presentation. The objectives, at least in my mind, and I would highlight that all of you participating in this session and I consider, is where could collaboration be introduced in your fundraising project? And you might want to start with like a list of parties that could collaborate. What sort of connections might be available? And how might you work with your chapter members and explore what sort of connections could come out of this project? What sort of exploration could happen? What sort of experience might you gain and other members of your chapter gain from this? And obviously, how much could be raised in terms of funds for the chapter for various purposes? The results, obviously, it's intended to raise some funds for the chapter. There might be an opportunity for you to approach your faculty and professors and say, I'm part of Delta Sigma Pi. We're undertaking this fundraising project, and it's got certain dimensions to it that might fit into my coursework. Might I be able to get course credit for participating in this? Now, this is only just a question that you can raise and ask, but it's definitely worth exploring. And I'm going to share with you a project that we did when I was an undergraduate, and one of the graduate students that was brought in to collaborate with us got course credit for basically being part of the project and being sort of an advisor to the project. So tonight we'll talk about examples. We will talk about a possible timeline. I'd love to get your feedback. We'll talk about next steps, and then we will conclude for this session and open up the path for the next session in January, if this is of interest to you. So here is an article that appeared in the local newspaper, the Arizona Republic, after we did our project. And I hate to tell you the year, but it was 1977. You'll notice I haven't changed a bit, but this was taken at our presentation to the Arizona State Fair administration and the board that was in charge of our Arizona State Fair. And what happened was our chapter was commissioned by the board that ran the Arizona State Fair to do a survey of people that were entering the state fair and departing the state fair. So our chapter members would stand at the gates of the fair, and as certain people came in, we do sort of a semi-random count, and we would ask people if they would be willing to participate in a survey. And generally they would, and most people were really, really great about it. And we had a list of questions that we would ask. We would get answers to those questions, and then we tabulated those results and put them into a report for the Fair Commission and the board. And for this project, and again, this is back in 1977, even though the article says we were not paid, we were paid, and our chapter raised $2,500, which I believe was a record for fundraising at that time, because normally we would raise, $200-300 if we were lucky, doing one of our fundraising projects. And this was not only a large fundraising opportunity for the chapter, but we also got some incredible experience out of this. I made some lifelong connections, and much to my chagrin, a few years later, when I was attending the state fair, somebody else had picked up on the idea, and they'd actually made a business out of it. And it was like a regular part of entering and exiting the state fair that you had the opportunity to participate in surveys and giveaways and all sorts of things. So I thought that was kind of interesting and sort of a validation of the concept. So I'm going to go over 3 examples for you to consider for your chapter. And this is just to sort of spark some ideas. There's nothing cast in stone here. This is just to sort of get your imagination turning in terms of what might be possible. So example number 1 would be to do some sort of consumer survey for businesses. And I'll talk about some target enterprises that you might approach for this initiative. But customer surveys could be very simple. Like we had a couple page survey, what brought you to the fair? What are your favorite elements of the state fair? What did you like? What did you not like? What could be improved, and so forth. And by the way, in the era of, where we're limited in many cases to having face-to-face conversations, I assert that something like this could be conducted virtually over Zoom, or possibly over the telephone, or maybe via email or whatever. So simply getting feedback from real users of businesses, or maybe public administration, or maybe nonprofits, that's certainly a viable project that your chapter could take on. And it's something that you could basically do as a one project initiative, where you could provide valuable feedback to some sort of entity that would be willing to work with the chapter to gather that information. So that's example number 1. Example number 2 might be to find some businesses, or even public administration, like your local government or whatever, and stage basically a new product focus group with something called possibly design thinking. And if you're not familiar with design thinking, I would highly recommend you look it up and do a little research on it, because it's a dynamic way to explore new ideas and to investigate prototyping. I'll brag a little bit. My son actually is an expert in design thinking, and he's had a phenomenal experience with design thinking, and has led one of the major financial institutions in this new realm of initiative. So basically, doing new product focus groups could be another particular topic or area where your chapter members could participate in helping some sort of business or enterprise or whatever explore what might be a new product for that business or enterprise. The third could be online feedback. So that might be something like going to a business, let's take an example, maybe a restaurant, or maybe a landscape service, or maybe some other business in your area, and saying, would you be interested in us talking with a sample of typical customers? Maybe they're not customers, but just have them take a look at your website and give you some feedback. Or maybe they're exploring, like one of our local grocery stores is offering curbside pickup now. They might be interested in getting some feedback from people that are using that service. And this could be something that you could conduct online and virtually via something like Zoom. And it might be maybe their Facebook or their social media presence or something like that. It's up to your imagination. And this is just simply an example. So those are 3 examples to consider. I'm going to pause, and if anybody has any questions, or if you'd like to, ask me about this before I go on, please do so.
And you're welcome to use the chat, or if you want to just turn your audio on, you're welcome to do that as well.
Yep. Cool. Well, feel free to interrupt, but here are some realms that, I would consider could be viable targets or candidates for this type of fundraising project for you. Obviously, for-profit enterprises, and those could be, pretty much any enterprise, pretty much anywhere in the world, since, there's a virtual possibility here. But it also might be profit enterprises that maybe some of your alumni are currently running, or they might have some ideas or some suggestions for candidates for this type of project. It might be nonprofit enterprises. You might be able to go to some of your nonprofit, your favorite nonprofit charities and causes and so forth, and say, our chapter has a group of talented and motivated individuals that are interested in learning new things. And is there anything that you would like in terms of getting feedback from the people that you serve? That could definitely be a project for you to undertake. And maybe the nonprofit might not fund it, but maybe one or two of their donors might be interested in getting that sort of feedback from this initiative and this project. It could be public administration services and agencies. There might be opportunities to work with some of your local governments that are interested in getting some sort of feedback on, services or projects or initiatives that they're interested in pursuing. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and some of the commerce entities here are very much interested in positioning Phoenix and Arizona in the forefront of the Internet of Things. So, there might be an opportunity, if we were doing this here in Phoenix, to go to one of the commerce enterprise groups and say, hey, would you like some feedback on what people think of the Internet of Things? We're also very strong on autonomous vehicles. Our state is trying to attract some of the top autonomous vehicles companies that are out there and getting started, and we actually have. So I think there's a whole realm of enterprises that you could approach for this particular initiative if it's of interest to you. The other thing is that you might take either side of the coin on this. So a business might be interested in having some, user feedback on their internal products and services, but they also might be interested in getting feedback from customers or potential customers on how their target customers view their competitors and the competitor products and services. So there's an opportunity to position this so that it could be providing valuable feedback on either internal products and services or the competitors' products and services, if that makes sense. So the next steps for you to consider is, first and foremost, just to think about this, and we'll be sharing this recording as well as the presentation, but talk with your chapter about it and, open it up, see what sort of creative, innovative, imaginative ideas that your chapter members might come up with. What are their ideas? Then if there's some sort of interest in this, taking on this project and this dynamic Deltasig fundraising direction, then form some sort of project team towards the beginning of the semester. And then that project team, and I'll talk about this towards the end of the presentation, I'm offering my coaching for helping your chapter to put the project together, form the team, obtain a client, if you will, and then do the project and complete the project. And I'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of the presentation. Then, once you've got a team together, you might open it up to the faculty of your university and say, hey, would you be willing to assist us with this project? Either before or after you have a client, you could get their input and their ideas. Certainly, alumni could be instrumental in working with you to formulate this project, put definition around it, and maybe give you some ideas in terms of potential clients that might be interested in this. Other participants, there might be other schools within your university or other colleges within your university where you might need certain expertise, like computer science or information technologies or so forth. It might be possible to invite people from other realms other than the business college to participate. And I assert that this could be a project that could really help you as you graduate from your university and start to get into whatever your career path is. I assure you, you will be working with engineers, software developers, IT folks, and working with them, creating a collaborative team and learning how they talk, how they think is becoming more and more critical for success in business and enterprise these days. You can create your objectives and timeline, and I'll be available to help you with that, and we'll have some more of these workshops and these presentations, and you can also share ideas with other chapters. We're going to keep it to a small set of chapters, or that's my intention at this point, but there's a possibility to start to collaborate, see what other chapters do throughout the fraternity, get ideas. And in this realm, it's fine to borrow and riff and use others' ideas to learn and explore and create some really powerful projects that basically have benefits in many different dimensions. So our next session, our follow-up session from this will be Monday, January the 11th at 8 p.m. Eastern, same time as we're having this tonight. My intention is I would love to work with 2 chapters to coach on this project and to explore next semester and see what the potential is. So, you know, that's my target, is to work with 2 chapters in this initiative set. If you're interested in this approach to fundraising and creating a chapter project that has a wide set of dimensions that your chapter members can benefit from, you can send an email to me just with some sort of subject like dynamic Deltasig fundraising and so forth. So that's sort of the follow-up. I would encourage you, if you haven't looked at this, but the website for the fraternity has some best practices for fundraising and how to help structure your fundraisers. And I'm sure we'll be working with other members of the administration of the fraternity as this progresses. So this is my background, and has a link to my LinkedIn, and feel free to contact me at any time, and I'd love to collaborate with you. And again, here is my contact information, and I will stop the screen share at this point. We can open it up for conversation.
Great. Thank you, Jay. Definitely a lot bigger thoughts than car washes and bake sales. So I'm sure that's refreshing to a lot of folks on this call, hearing bigger ideas. Everyone, you're welcome to turn your cameras on and have a conversation, or if you have a question or a thought to share, or even a bigger fundraiser that you at your chapter has been doing that you want to talk about, please join us.
Atiana, I believe you have your hand up. Go ahead and unmute and please chime in.
Hi, I tried opening my video, but I couldn't. I think because it was turned off, not by me. But I was questioning, is there any type of chapter size that you're actually there? Is there any type of chapter size that you're looking for?
Great question. Nope, I'm not concerned about how many people. If there's one person that's inspired by this from a chapter of any size, that's really all I'm looking for, is to take that inspiration, that imagination, and help you really explore what's possible and create some sort of project that's meaningful for you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Sorry, just asking because we were a pretty small chapter, like only 40 brothers, maybe a little bit more. So.
No, that's perfect.
That's great.
That's great. So we do have Lori Sinko, who is actually participated in our fair event, our Arizona State Fair survey. Lori, is there anything that you would like to say about what that experience was like for you?
Sure, Jay. As Jay already mentioned, this was a very unique, innovative project, and I remember participating in the surveys several different days at the state fair. It was a lot of fun, and at that time, $2,500 for the chapter was just a huge amount of money, and we really were so pleased that we could do several years worth of fundraising with that one chapter. And so it was a lot of fun, great collaborative resources and partnerships, as Jay already mentioned, with people in the business community. So it was interesting.
Great. Thank you, Lori.
I would encourage the chapters too to try to think outside the box for a more global project than just like Shanda mentioned. But anyway, she already mentioned them. Yeah. I know my mind went blank there. I know some chapters have done things like coordinated with their College of Business dean to do different things for the whole university. And those are the ways to not only collaborate, but make more money. So.
Well, and as also make new connections too, and work with people that you never know what's going to come out of those connections and that collaboration. Tatiana, am I pronouncing that correctly?
You are.
Okay, great. Thank
Sorry, I
you.
have so many questions. I mean, if someone else has a
No,
question,
no,
they can
that's
totally go
awesome.
before me.
It's great.
But I was just curious, so say a chapter does work with you for next semester, is the project something you think that they could carry year after year? Or is it something that we could only kind of do with you and your team?
I think there's a great opportunity for continuity year after year. And it's just a matter of, you know, having some level of hitting your targets and success. And it might be just formulating the plan. I don't know. But I think you could definitely create something that could be kind of a ongoing structure or framework for the chapter. You know, as I mentioned, I was quite surprised and rather pleased to return to the Arizona State Fair and see that somebody else had actually turned this into an enterprise, a money-making endeavor for them. It wasn't my cup of tea, but I mean, it was great to do the project one time, but I think you could definitely create something that could be long lasting, and it would be a great opportunity to set up a framework with, you know, some documentation and maybe some videos and things like that, that other future chapter members could pick up on and do themselves, for sure. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. And a follow-up to that, is this something that, because we are using this like a fundraising kind of event, is this something that a chapter needs to put any money ahead of time into, like a fund that we need to set up beforehand, or can we start off the bat with kind of going in with nothing?
I think going in with nothing, learning how to bootstrap, learning how to have something self-fund is really, if you only got that lesson out of this, you would be so far ahead of so many entrepreneurs out there. That's a whole nother workshop. But yes, I think you can start with basically nothing, and you know, with a little bit of imagination, and certainly we can brainstorm, but I don't foresee the chapter needing any sort of seed funding for this whatsoever. That's the intention. So Atiana, I'll put you on the spot a little bit, but are there any projects that come to mind for you that, you know, out of this presentation? What's your impression of this, and what is anything coming to mind for you?
Well, I have a few things in mind, like previously before this presentation, that I'm thinking that this kind of is boosting my efforts and possibly actually fulfilling. Like, for example, getting corporations involved, because we currently, like I said, we're a very small chapter and at a very small school. So currently, up until my point, we've only been doing very like small kind of on-campus fundraisers. But I really want to take next semester to truly branch outside of our small little county, like our small city of Macon, Georgia, into even going to Atlanta or anything beyond that. So
yeah, we really, you know, through the technology like Zoom, you know, really the sky's the limit. You really have no geographic boundaries.
yeah, and I see that, which is my whole thing. Is I'm currently about to become a senior, so I want to make sure I'm setting up my chapter with something that they can use not only just for next semester and have money as we have like Grand Chapter Congress paying up that we're fundraising for, but something that they can use year after year from now that we can depend on. Okay, this is something we know worked in the past that we can keep doing, but right now we're kind of like picking up things here and there and trying stuff, but never really finding something that sticks with us.
Cool. And what is your area of study and your area of interest? What would you like to go into?
I want to go into finance and accounting.
Cool. Very cool. Well, I think if we did a little brainstorming, we could come up with some sort of direction for your chapter to create something that would, you know, assist in finance and accounting as well. So, yeah.
And I might mention, I think, you know, Jay kind of alluded to it when he talked about the different areas you might go to in the profit world and the nonprofit. But sometimes talking to your university student affairs office or your dean, sometimes even your universities have projects that they have on their back burner that they've not pursued because they haven't had the right people to do it. And all of a sudden, if you have a student organization coming forward that might be interested and available and motivated to take part, you might find a really big win-win, within your current environment. So as you talk to Jay and as you think about ideas, don't discount just what's right on your campus. Talk to your dean's office and your assistant dean and some others. You may be pleasantly surprised. I know some chapters have over the years and have found some really good opportunities.
Yeah, that's a great point, Shanda. And if there's one thing that you walk away with from this evening and your time spent on this session tonight, is that the power is in the question. So I can't tell you how many times I've come up with what I thought was a good idea and start to pursue that good idea and realize that I think it's a good idea, but maybe nobody else does. And even when I do that, it almost inevitably leads to something else. So it's really, the key is, number one, ask questions. And number two is take action. So, this week or last week, Airbnb went public. Now, initially, their target for their IPO, their initial public offering, I think was they were expecting to have it valued at about $47 billion. And, you got to keep in mind that Airbnb is radical in so many different ways. But I would encourage you to look at the history of Airbnb, because they went on many directions that failed initially. And many people thought that the idea of Airbnb was absolutely crazy. And if you turn back the clock 10 years and you had said, hey, Jay, next time you go to a strange town, the next time you go to Atlanta, would you like to stay in some stranger's house? And, you pay them to stay overnight, just like you would on a hotel. I would have said, you are absolutely out of your mind. Or if they had said, hey, Jay, there's a stranger coming in from Atlanta. Would you like to rent out your bedroom to this stranger? I would have said, you're absolutely crazy. And yet look at what Airbnb has done to the hotel industry and the accommodations industry, and look at their initial public offering last week that basically doubled in price from what it was, I think, originally priced at. The same thing with Uber Eats, or what was it, DoorDash, that went public. I mean, that was simply an idea 7 years ago. And I'm not suggesting that anybody's going to get rich out of this project or anything else, and maybe you will. All I'm suggesting is there's two things that are important. Number one is ask questions. What do you want? What do you need? What's possible? And number two is to take action. And it, my personal sharing and your time spent tonight on this call, if you just start to explore those two things, in my view, miracles start to emerge. So, any other thoughts or comments?
Has anyone started a project at their school, fundraising wise, that's a bit bigger and you feel has legs that, with a little bit of help could become a bigger fundraising source for your chapter? Feel free to share.
Yeah, I am interested in what sort of projects your chapters have, put together for fundraising. What are your purposes for fundraising? What are you looking to fund? that sort of thing.
Great. Well, Jay, I think you have filled their brains with lots of thoughts, and they're pondering the next steps at this point. That's what Philip and Ariana are shaking their head for. So I did put your contact information in the chat in case someone didn't capture it from your presentation. And I would encourage you, if you do want to pursue some next steps and talk to Jay, please reach out to him. He's there and excited and motivated to do this with our chapters, and we'd love to keep him involved and give you all some new ideas. So Jay, any closing thoughts or comments from you?
No, I really appreciate everybody's time, and just let your imagination run wild with this, and whatever might be in your way, I suggest that, probably the biggest thing in my way is usually me, because I think, hey, I can't do that. I don't have the skills, the expertise, or whatever. And whenever I set that aside, again, miracles start to open up, and it's really a conversation with other people. And probably the biggest hurdle is me taking the first step to get to know somebody and ask questions and say, hey, what do you think about this? And that's usually the biggest hurdle. So thank you so much, everybody, for your time and attention. I hope you have great holidays, and feel free to contact me, and I look forward to our next session on January the 11th, 2021, and same time, and we'll go from there.